Someone you love is gone. The body is still there, and you have no idea what to do next. That feeling, that terrible, suspended, wordless moment, is not a modern problem. It is one of the oldest experiences in human history. In fact, it may be one of the things that made you human in the first place. Because here is what most people do not realize. The way your ancestors responded to death did not just reveal who they were. It actually shaped who you are. The rituals, the grief, the strange impulse to do something, anything, for someone who can no longer respond. All of it goes back much further than any religion. Much further than any civilization. Further back even than language itself. And when you trace it all the way to the beginning, what you find is not primitive. It is not barbaric. It is something that will make you see your own grief completely differently. Let us go back. Way back. Around 430,000 years ago, in a cave in northern Spain called the Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, researchers made one of the most unsettling discoveries in the history of paleoanthropology. At the bottom of a deep shaft, they found the remains of at least 28 individuals. Skulls, femurs, vertebrae, all jumbled together in a single underground chamber. Archaeologist Juan Luis Arzuaga, who led the excavation, spent decades trying to understand what he was looking at. There was no sign of predator activity, no evidence of a campsite or living space. The bodies had not fallen in by accident. Someone had put them there, deliberately. Before the species that would eventually become you had developed anything we would recognize as culture, something was already happening around death. Something intentional. Your ancestor, a species called Homo heidelbergensis, was carrying their dead to a specific place. Not because it was practical, because it meant something. That impulse did not go away. It grew. By the time Neanderthals walked the earth, roughly 200,000 to 40,000 years ago, the relationship between humans and death had become something more complex. Neanderthals have long been dismissed as brutish, reactive, barely conscious creatures. But the archaeological record tells a different story. At a site called Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, archaeologist Ralph Seletsky excavated the remains of a Neanderthal individual and found something strange in the soil around the bones. Pollen. Large quantities of pollen from at least 8 flowering plant species. Some of them were medicinal plants still used in that region today. The interpretation, still debated, was that flowers had been placed with the body. That someone had buried this person and covered them in something living and beautiful. Think about that for a moment. Long before your ancestors had cities or governments or writing, someone was standing at the edge of a grave in what is now Iraq holding flowers. They did not do this because a book told them to. They did not do this because a priest instructed them. They did it because something in them, some deep internal signal, said that this moment required more than nothing. Your brain still carries that signal. In fact, researchers like anthropologist Paul Pettit, who has mapped the full archaeology of human mortuary behavior, argue that this impulse to mark death, to do something in response to it, may be one of the key cognitive leaps that separates humans from every other species on the planet. Other animals mourn. Elephants return to bones. Chimpanzees carry dead infants for days. But they do not bury. They do not decorate. They do not build. You do. And when your early ancestors started to build around death, what they built was extraordinary. Consider what happened roughly 100,000 years ago at a site called Kafsa Cave in present-day Israel. Researchers excavated a burial site where anatomically modern humans, people who looked exactly like you, had placed a child's body with deer antlers laid across it. The antlers had been gathered from somewhere else and brought to this location. This was not random. This was symbolic. This child was being sent somewhere, or protected from something, or honored in a way that required effort and intention. The anthropologist Ian Tattersall, who has written extensively on the emergence of human symbolic thinking, points to burials like this as some of the earliest direct evidence that your ancestors could think beyond the present moment. To bury someone with grave goods, with objects, with flowers, with care, you have to be able to imagine that the dead person still exists in some form. You have to be able to believe in something you cannot see. That cognitive leap, the ability to hold an invisible world in your mind alongside the visible one, is the same leap that eventually produced art, language, religion, music, and every other thing that makes human civilization possible. Grief built your brain. But ancient death rituals were not only about the dead. They were about the living. They were social technologies as much as any tool made from flint or bone. Across dozens of archaeological sites from Europe to Africa to Southeast Asia, researchers have found consistent evidence of communal mortuary behavior. People gathering together around a body, meals being shared near the grave site, ochre, a red pigment, being applied to the bones or the body before burial, at sites going back at least 100,000 years. Red, the color of blood, the color of life, painted onto something that was no longer alive. Think about what that act requires. You have to look at a dead body and decide to do something to it. You have to stand in the presence of death and respond with art. That is not a primitive impulse. That is one of the most sophisticated things a mind can do. And it did not stop there. By around 30,000 years ago, at sites like Sungir in Russia, researchers found burials that are almost impossible to comprehend in terms of the labor involved. 2 children buried head to head, covered with more than 10,000 mammoth ivory beads that had been painstakingly carved and strung. Bracelets, pendants, spears made from straightened mammoth tusks placed alongside them. The entire burial would have required tens of thousands of hours of collective human work. These were not important leaders being buried. They were children, which means your ancestors were pouring the energy of an entire community into honoring people who had not yet had the chance to contribute to that community. They were declaring, in the most material way possible, that the dead still mattered, that they were still people, that the community still owed them something. Archaeologist Randall White, who has studied the Sungir burials extensively, describes them as evidence of a fully formed symbolic world. A world in which death was not the end of a person's relationship with their community. It was a transformation of that relationship. You still feel this. Every time you keep a photo of someone who is gone. Every time you visit a grave and talk to someone who cannot answer. Every time you say, "She would have loved this," about something a dead person never got to see. You are participating in a ritual that is at least 100,000 years old. The specific form changes. The impulse does not. Across different ancient cultures, the forms were wildly varied. Some groups practiced excarnation, leaving the body exposed to the elements and birds until only the bones remained, then collecting and burying those bones. Some built elaborate mounds. Some cremated. Some kept the skull of a dead ancestor inside the home for years, as was the case at the Neolithic site of Catalhoyuk in what is now Turkey, where researchers found skulls plastered with clay, sometimes given new painted faces, kept beneath the floors where the living ate and slept. Imagine that, sleeping above the face of your grandmother, waking up every morning with the dead directly below you, not because it was frightening, because it was comforting, because keeping them close meant they were not fully gone. That need to not let someone be fully gone is something your nervous system still runs on. When psychologist John Bowlby developed his theory of grief in the 1960s and 70s, he described mourning as a biological process, not just an emotional one. The brain, he argued, is literally searching for the lost person, scanning the environment, expecting them to appear around a corner. That is why grief is so physically exhausting. Your brain is running a search that cannot end. It is looking for someone who is not there. Your ancient ancestors understood this intuitively before the vocabulary existed to name it. And so they gave the searching mind something to find, a grave to visit, a bone to touch, a place where the dead could be located, even if they could not be seen. The ritual was not superstition. It was cognitive technology. It was a way of giving the mourning brain somewhere to put its grief. And perhaps this is the most disorienting thing of all. When you stand at a funeral and you do not know what to say. When you bring food to someone's house because death has visited it. When you sit in silence next to a grieving person because silence is the only honest thing. You are not improvising. You are not doing something uniquely modern or personally invented. You are following a script that is hundreds of thousands of years old, written not in any language but in the architecture of the human brain itself. Someone you love is gone. The body is still there, and somewhere inside you, ancient as the pit of bones, Something already knows what to do.